Last week we discussed a close call that I had on a motorcycle several years ago and how I avoided that crash. So if you haven't seen that video, you can see it here on the MCrider YouTube page, and I'd encourage you to watch that video first and then come back and watch this one if you haven't seen it or remember the details. I got a whole lot of comments on that video, but one of them really stuck out to me and really got me to thinking. Here's the comment. It says, I've been in 2 accidents on my bike. Neither was my fault. The last one was really bad and I quit riding. I miss it every day, but people are stupid and I can't justify it with kids now. It sucks. Now, I don't know any more about this viewer than what I've shared with you right here, and I don't know any more about this story than what I can learn from the comments. So first of all, let me say I feel bad for this rider because they want to ride, but they consider the risk of riding too great, and now they have kids to think about also. Now, believe me, I get that. It's not something that I've taken lightly in my own riding. I've been married since May of 1991. We have 2 beautiful daughters, and they don't remember a day where I've not ridden a motorcycle to and from work or on the weekends. In fact, when they were toddlers, they used to run out into the garage whenever I would pull the bike into the garage, and I'd have to hop off the bike and go, whoa, 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 don't touch, hot, hot, so that they didn't run over and touch the motorcycle and burn themselves. In every class that I've ever taken, every time I've practiced on a parking lot, and every time I study some new road strategy technique, I do so with my family in the back of my mind. It's part of the reason why I want to get better. They are part of what motivates me to be a smarter, better rider. Also, I would never try to talk another person into riding that thinks it may not be worth the risk for them and their family. Man, I just don't want that responsibility. It's their choice. It's your choice whether or not you choose to ride, and if not, why not? The thing that stuck out to me about this comment was that they said they had 2 crashes and neither was their fault. Now, again, I don't know. That may be a 100% accurate statement. There may have been nothing that the rider could do to avoid either crash. But in my experience with riding, there is usually something that could have been done to avoid the crash altogether, lessen the chance of the crash, or its impact of the crash on us. So for this video, I want to talk about 2 things. We'll talk about legal responsibility for a crash, and for lack of a better term, and I don't know what else to call it, but we'll call it moral responsibility for a crash. So what do I mean by legal responsibility and moral responsibility? Well, let's use my story from last week as an example. A driver in a large SUV barely rounded a blind corner and then decided to make an illegal U-turn right in the middle of the road, entirely blocking the 2-lane road ahead of me. If I had hit that driver in that situation, they would have been legally responsible for the crash. If that had been the case, many people would come on and tell the story of that crash from last week with a little different twist than I told it. They may have said something like, sometimes we're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes someone does something dumb and it causes us to crash. Sometimes we have to pay the penalty for their mistake. Riding a motorcycle is just too dangerous. But that wasn't how my video last week went, and it wasn't how my story ended when I told the story of my crash. I avoided the crash in part because of my moral responsibility as a rider to do so. I was not a victim of the foolishness of someone else on the road. But let's change my story up some from last week. Let's say instead of riding at 25 to 30 miles per hour, I was riding at 50 miles per hour when I rounded that corner. Let's say I was riding at the peak of my ability and was rounding that corner pretending to be a MotoGP star. Let's say I had really bad lane position, even worse view around that corner because it was a blind corner, and I was thinking about what I was going to have for dinner whenever I got home. Let's say I was doing a moto vlog and I had my attention on the audience and what I would say rather than my riding, and I'm mugging for the camera trying to look good as I round this corner. Let's say I'd not practiced emergency braking in a curve since I took the MSF class, or I falsely believed, as some of you did in the comments of last week's video, that ABS would have saved me in that situation. Cornering ABS, possibly, but it's totally different than regular ABS, and you need to know which one your motorcycle has on it because it will affect the way that you can stop a motorcycle in a corner. So if all of that were true, I probably would have had a crash, and the driver making the illegal U-turn probably would have still been found legally responsible for causing the crash. But in my mind, I would have contributed to the crash because I did not morally do all I could do to avoid the crash. Legally, I would not be responsible, but morally, I did not ride as a smart rider. If you have a crash and lose your life, you are just as gone no matter who is legally responsible for the crash. The fact that you are legally right has zero impact on the consequences of the crash. That's why as riders, we have to be morally responsible for the way we ride. As riders, we need to refuse to be a victim on the road. Being a victim can become a disease on a motorcycle and in life. We feel sorry for ourselves because we think we have no control over our situation. We resign to being a victim, in part because it reduces our personal responsibility for our situation, and we hope that the world will feel sorry for us and give us a handout. In the world of motorcycling, there are very few innocent victims. We often play a role in the crashes we're involved in, even if we're not legally responsible for the crash. Am I saying that a motorcycle rider is never an innocent party? No, not at all. We need laws in place to keep drivers off of their cell phones, to keep drivers from driving under the influence, and from making illegal U-turns right after a blind corner. All of those laws are good and necessary, and they help settle fault in a courtroom of who's going to pay the costs. But my goal as a rider is to never be the victim in a court of law in the first place. And I do that by fulfilling my moral responsibility to myself and my family every time I ride. I try to employ good road strategy. I try to maintain good following distance. I try to remain alert and not daydreaming. I always ride 100% sober. I maintain good road skills. I keep my motorcycle in good running condition and well maintained. And if everything else goes south, I wear protective gear that will protect me in case that I am involved in a crash. Am I a perfect rider? No, no one is. But I try to always get better, and I try to ride with a moral responsibility that will keep me safe on the road. You know, crashes happen because of a variety of bad circumstances, some random and some on purpose or due to neglect of either party. All meet at a certain place in the road at a certain time of day, and the end result is a crash. Our job and our moral responsibility as riders is to take care of all the stuff that is under our control by maintaining our road skills, sharpening our road strategy, and wearing protective gear every time we get on a motorcycle. Even doing all of that, we share the road with others who are imperfect. Sometimes they make innocent mistakes, and sometimes they live a lifestyle that is prone to mistakes, and their poor choices and driving style affects others on the road. But it is only by fulfilling our moral responsibility as riders that we can truly limit the risks of riding, and then we can make an honest assessment if riding is worth the remaining risk. So I hope you have a great week. Maybe get a ride in or something this weekend. Till next week, guys, it's Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.